To get back at the fake heiress, I decided to keep her so-called dream guy under my thumb. I tormented him endlessly. Watching him lose his cool, he'd snap at me. "Sophia, this is all you've got." These cheap tricks. That only made me even more excited. I pushed him to his limits, over and over again. Until one day, a line of floating text appeared before my eyes. The supporting character is really asking to be doomed. Does she not know that Ethan is the sole heir of the wealthy Zai family? The day he returns to his family will be the day of her reckoning. The words scared me so much that I ended up falling right onto Ethan. Ugh! He let out a low groan of pain. Without even looking back, I shoved him aside and bolted. But the day I returned home for an arranged marriage, Ethan, with his face as cold as ice, sneered. "Weren't you so bold before?" #1 I tilted my head, glancing at the man whose hands I'd tied up with a silk ribbon. With a sweet smile, I leaned in close to his ear and whispered, "Tell me, do you think Isabella knows just how? You are behind closed doors." I said the last word in a sultry, barely audible tone. Ethan closed his eyes, clearly not in the mood to humor me. My fingers traced his face, sliding down to his collarbone, then lower to the sharp lines of his abs. Wouldn't it be fun to give her a sneak peek? His eyes snapped open. "Do you think everyone's as shameless as you?" "Sophia," he added, his tone biting, "this is all you're capable of, these petty tricks." I let out a soft laugh and playfully bit down on his collarbone. Not playing nice, that calls for punishment. Ethan pressed his lips together, clearly deep in thought. I was still a little winded from earlier. But suddenly, my interest was piqued again. Just as I was about to make a move, the space in front of me began to distort. And then, floating in the air, a series of glowing words appeared. I have to admit, they do look good together. The supporting character is asking for trouble. Ethan is the sole heir of the richest family in the country. The day he returns home will be her undoing. Without the trouble, the supporting character stirs up. How would our heroine shine as the perfect angel? The text startled me so much that I plopped down right onto Ethan. "Ugh," Ethan grunted in pain. I quickly clamped a hand over his mouth. "SHH, don't make a sound." Ethan shot me a glare, his eyes practically saying, "What's gotten into you this time?" Why aren't they moving? Even though it's pixelated, their silhouettes alone are fun to watch. What scheme is the supporting character plotting now? At that moment, I was certain. The floating text was talking about me and Ethan. I glanced at Ethan. Broad shoulders, long limbs, sharp features, and skin so flawless it looked like jade. I couldn't deny it, even though I'd only gotten involved with him to get back at Isabella. Ethan was exactly my type. But remembering what the text had said sent a chill down my spine. I valued my life too much to keep this up. Ethan, still smothered by my hand, looked like he was about to pass out. I quickly let go. Cough, cough. What kind of crazy stunt are you pulling this time? Watching his pale skin flush with a hint of red, I silently chanted to myself, "Desire is an illusion. Desire is an illusion." Before Ethan could react, I grabbed the silk ribbon and blindfolded him. He didn't even flinch, clearly used to my antics. Once I was sure he couldn't see, I quickly grabbed my clothes and made my escape. 2. The next time I ran into Ethan was the following day at school. He shot me a frosty glare. As we passed each other in the hallway, I acted like I didn't care. Isabella was walking beside him, chatting happily. When she noticed me, her smile vanished in an instant. "Sophia," Isabella said with forced politeness, "Dad and Mom wanted me to remind you not to forget your fitting for the dress tonight." I gave her a fake smile. "Thanks for the reminder. Must be hard for you, playing the messenger." Her face darkened, and when she saw me glance at Ethan, she quickly stepped in front of him, as if shielding him from me. I let out a soft scoff, my gaze lazily drifting to Ethan. That's when I noticed the faint bruise on his wrist. I froze. Crap. I'd forgotten to untie him last night. Feeling a pang of guilt, I instinctively shrank back. Ethan was tied up by the supporting character all night. He must hate her guts right now. Haha, why does the supporting character's guilty expression look kind of cute? Sis, wake up. She's a total Black Lotus flower. I fled the scene as quickly as I could, not daring to linger under their judgmental stares any longer. Back in my seat in class, I spun my pen absent-mindedly, lost in thought. The floating text had mentioned Ethan's true identity, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. He always looked so ordinary. If he were truly wealthy, why would he have agreed to stay with me just to pay for his mother's medical bills? His background must be more complicated than he let on. And then my mind wandered back to all the things I'd done to Ethan. Ugh, what a mess. No matter how I looked at it, there was no way out of this situation. The way Ethan and I had met was straight out of a cheesy soap opera. I was the real heiress of the Jiang family, swapped at birth. When I finally returned home, I discovered that Isabella, the girl who had taken my place, had been the perfect daughter for over a decade. But life isn't like the movies. Isabella wasn't some evil villain. She wasn't exceptional. But after years of privileged upbringing, she could at least play the piano, paint, and hold her own in conversation. And me? I was just a small-town girl from an obscure little city, the kind of girl whose life revolved around nothing but exams. I couldn't hold a candle to her. When I came back to the Jiang family, Robert and Victoria were kind to me, but it was clear their affection lay elsewhere. They tried to make up for lost time, but their efforts felt more like a polite obligation than genuine love. Thankfully, I was selfish enough not to care. If I felt like stirring up trouble, I did it. If I wanted to spend their money, I didn't hesitate. No guilt, no regrets. The thrill that money brought me smoothed out many bumps in my life, but Isabella's presence was a constant reminder of the cold, hard truth that I was unloved. To spite Isabella, I deliberately enrolled at the same university as her. It was there that I met Ethan. Ethan was Isabella's unattainable white moonlight. I'd seen it more than once, the way Isabella's eyes lit up with a girlish infatuation whenever she looked at him. So to take revenge on her, I sought out Ethan. At the time, Ethan's mother was ill and needed surgery. The financial compensation I offered was too tempting to resist. Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. Looking back now, I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to get back at me someday. Thinking about Ethan, I curled my lips in disdain. What a pity. I haven't had my fill of him yet. That evening, after I got home, I saw a message from Ethan. Where are you? Immersed in reading serialized stories online, I suddenly remembered today was the day Ethan and I usually met. I glanced at the clock. He had already been waiting for 2 hours. I felt a pang of guilt. Initially, I wanted to text him and tell him to just leave. But then I thought, if this is coming to an end, it's better to settle things face to face. Before heading out, I changed out of the sultry camisole dress I had planned to wear. I swapped it for a more conservative, preppy Chanel-inspired vest and skirt set. Standing in front of the mirror, I checked myself over. Everything looked proper. When I arrived, Ethan was sitting with his head down, fiddling with his phone. I couldn't tell what he was looking at. When he noticed me, his face remained as cold as ever, his brows slightly furrowed. "Sophia, your lateness is getting worse," he said curtly. "Let's make it quick today. I still have to get to the hospital tonight." Ethan was wearing a slightly sheer white shirt that clung to his body. Beneath the fabric, The faint outline of his muscles teased the eye, a quiet yet undeniable sensuality. I scanned him from head to toe, taking my time. Then I curved my lips into a sly smile. "Feeling bold today, aren't you?" Ethan froze for a moment before responding, his tone sharp. "Wasn't this what you wanted last time?" It took me a second to remember. Last time, I had idly remarked while tracing his abs that he would look great in a white shirt. I hadn't expected him to actually wear one. At that moment, a mental image popped into my mind, like a streaming comment floating in the air. "Ah, Ethan is so handsome, my dream husband, muscles wrapped in white nature's finest gift. This girl lives the dream." I'd trade places with Sophia in a heartbeat. As the comments played out in my head, I couldn't help but revisit the memory of what lay beneath Ethan's clothes. It really was impressive. I shook my head, banishing my wandering thoughts. I smiled faintly, the way I always did. "Ethan, I'm bored now. You're free to go." I pulled a card out of my small purse and handed it to him. "This card has enough money to cover your mom's surgery and recovery expenses. Consider it my parting gift." Ethan stood frozen, his entire body stiff. Then, anger surged across his face. "Sophia, do you have to humiliate me like this?" I stayed where I was, my posture unchanging. "How am I humiliating you?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. I really didn't understand. I was giving him money and his freedom. Shouldn't he be happy? Ethan's face flushed red with rage. He let out a cold, bitter laugh and shoved the card away. "Take your money and get it out of my face." Then, without another word, he grabbed his jacket and stormed out. I stood there, dumbfounded. On the table, the strawberry cake I had brought was starting to melt. I stared at it, lost in thought. Isabella loved chocolate cake. To spite her, I always made sure to buy one just like hers. But the truth was, I didn't even like chocolate. Few people knew that my favorite was actually strawberry cake. Why would Ethan buy Sophia a strawberry cake? And he used his hard-earned money for it, no less. He probably picked a fancy bakery so she wouldn't turn her nose up at it. Still, she won't appreciate it, haha. I turned to look at the direction Ethan had disappeared in. How thoughtful of him. I carried the now melted strawberry cake home. Victoria was chatting with Isabella about something, and the two of them were laughing like old friends. When she saw me, Victoria's smile faded slightly. Her tone softened. "Sophia, where have you been so late?" I waved the cake box in my hand. "Went out to buy this." Victoria glanced at the box and frowned. "Don't eat so many cheap desserts. Aunt Zhang just made some nougat and chocolate cake. Have that instead." All of it was Isabella's favorite. I forced a smile. "No need. Cheap things suit me just fine, don't they?" Isabella chimed in, "Sophia, you shouldn't talk to Mom like that." I turned to her, my smile syrupy sweet. "She's my biological mom. I'll talk to her however I like. What's it to you? It's only thanks to a mix-up that you even have the chance to stand here and act all high and mighty. You, a beneficiary of someone else's misfortune. What right do you have to bark at me like a dog?" Isabella was stunned. Although I often used underhanded ways to antagonize her, I had never confronted her so openly before. For the first time, Victoria looked at me with a hint of disapproval. "Sophia, how can you speak to Isabella like that? Where are your manners?" I let out a cold laugh. "No home, no manners. Naturally, I can't compare to the daughter you raised with your own two hands." Before leaving, I walked up to Isabella, leaning close to her ear. "You like Ethan, don't you?" Isabella's face flushed red in an instant. "You," I cut her off, my tone sharp and mocking. "He's quite fun to play with, but I'm bored now. I'll leave him to you." I watched with satisfaction as Isabella's face turned from red to pale. Whistling lightly, I made my way upstairs, feeling rather pleased with myself. This time, Isabella's hatred for me reached its peak. Her retaliation came swiftly. Over the weekend, our family attended a banquet together. I wore an ethereal pearl-white embroidered dress, exuding elegance, while Isabella opted for something understated and modest. During the event, a man around 25 or 26 kept stealing glances at me. My father, Robert, pulled me over to introduce him. Sophia, this is Nathan, the second son of the Joe family. Nathan's gaze was brazenly appraising, making me feel deeply uncomfortable. I glanced at Isabella, who stood nearby with an amused expression, clearly delighted by the unfolding scene. My unease grew. I nodded politely and excused myself, finding an opportunity to leave. Just as I was about to step outside, I spotted Ethan in a waiter's uniform. His striking appearance drew numerous admiring glances as he moved through the crowd. When our eyes met, he feigned indifference, as though we were strangers. Unable to resist, I sneaked up behind him and pinched his backside. His face instantly turned scarlet as he spun around, furious. "Sophia, what are you doing now?" I shrugged nonchalantly, withdrawing my hand. After glancing around to ensure no one had noticed, I replied casually, "Sorry, just couldn't help it." Ethan shot me a cold glare before storming off. Haha, Sophia's boldness is absolutely unmatched. Ethan's blushing face is so adorable it's too much. I can't stop shipping these two. Honestly, Ethan probably didn't hate it that much. I wandered aimlessly, waiting for my parents to finish socializing. A waiter I didn't recognize approached me. "Excuse me, are you Miss Sophia?" I nodded. "A gentleman with the last name Zai asked me to bring you to him." I was puzzled. Ethan had been avoiding me like the plague earlier. Why would he ask to see me now? Still, I didn't think much of it and followed the waiter. It wasn't until we reached a suite upstairs that I began to feel something was off. Could Ethan be planning some dramatic breakup scene? I mused. It wouldn't be entirely out of character for him. Pushing open the door, I was immediately hit by a pungent, unfamiliar scent. Through the frosted glass of the shower, I could faintly make out the outline of someone bathing. "Ethan, Ethan," I called out. But as I squinted, I realized the silhouette didn't match Ethan's physique. My stomach sank. I'd walked straight into a trap. Just as I was processing the absurdity of the situation, Nathan stepped out of the bathroom, clad only in a towel around his waist. I bolted for the door, only to collide head-on with someone. It was Ethan. He frowned, steadying me as I stumbled. "Sophia." Relief washed over me at the sight of him, though it was quickly replaced by an intense wave of heat surging through my body. Something was wrong. "What's going on? Why is your face so red?" Ethan asked, his brows furrowing deeper as he noticed my condition. I didn't answer. My instincts took over as I grabbed him and dragged him into the nearest room. By the time I came to my senses, 3 hours had passed. Ethan's body was marked with hickeys and bite marks, some so deep they were faintly bleeding. He lay beneath me, his expression unreadable as he slept. I rested my head on his chest, feeling utterly defeated. Wow, Isabella really went all out this time. Poor Sophia. Isabella's no pushover, she's the protagonist after all. But Sophia kind of had this coming for messing with her dream guy. Still, this feels way too extreme. Sophia deserves better. Reading the barrage of comments, I felt a surge of anger. Since when did being the protagonist give someone the right to trample over others' lives? I glanced at Ethan. He was still asleep. Sighing in resignation, I got dressed quietly and slipped out of the room. My phone had over 20 missed calls, all from Robert and Victoria. Scoffing, I turned it off without hesitation. When I returned home, The house was dark. I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly at the irony. Just as I was heading upstairs, Victoria's voice stopped me. She must have heard the sound of the door. "Sophia, where have you been? We've been calling you nonstop." Moments later, Robert and Isabella joined her, descending the stairs one after the other. Isabella crossed her arms, her expression all faux concern. "Sophia, where did you go? We were so worried about you. Even if you dislike these social events, you can't just leave without telling anyone." Robert's face darkened. "Staying out all night? Sophia, you've brought nothing but shame to this family." I let out a laugh, cold and hollow, my gaze sweeping across the three of them. What a picture-perfect trio they made. Too bad I didn't belong in it. Dropping my bag on the table, I slowly removed my coat, taking deliberate steps toward Isabella. She looked at me, puzzled, as I closed the distance. In one swift motion, I grabbed her by the hair and slapped her across the face, hard and twice. Isabella shrieked, her voice piercing through the house. Victoria rushed over, trying to pry me off her. "Sophia, have you lost your mind? Let go of her." I didn't let go, not yet. I lunged straight for Isabella's weakest point. Still unsatisfied, I extended my claws and aimed for her face. My sharp nails quickly left a deep scratch across her cheek. "This is outrageous, absolutely outrageous." Robert clutched at his chest, his face twisted with anger. But I didn't stop. Grabbing the scissors from the flower arrangement on the table, I began hacking away at Isabella's long hair with reckless abandon. "Ah, stop it. Sophia, are you insane? Mom, Dad, help me." Isabella screamed, her voice desperate and shrill. I didn't know how long it lasted. Finally, when I was out of breath, I stopped, panting heavily. "Sophia, you lunatic." Isabella glared at me, her hair now a chaotic mess, her eyes red with fury. "I'll kill you for this." Victoria quickly pulled her back, casting a wary glance in my direction. I smoothed out my dress with deliberate grace, a faint smile playing on my lips. "Didn't you want to know where I was going earlier?" I said, my tone light but sharp. "Your precious daughter here drugged me and tried to deliver me to Nathan's bed. Or did you too approve of this as well?" I directed my gaze at Robert and Victoria. Victoria's eyes widened in disbelief. "What nonsense are you spouting? How could we ever do something so despicable?" I pressed on, my voice calm but cutting. "Don't think I didn't notice. Tonight, Dad, you were deliberately trying to push me toward Nathan. Am I really that much of a burden to you? Are you so desperate to pack me off to someone else's bed?" Robert's face darkened further, his brows furrowing deeply. "We may have considered a marriage alliance with the Joe family, but we would never resort to something so low." Isabella tried to compose herself, though her voice wavered slightly. "You're accusing me. Where's your evidence?" "Oh, Isabella," I said, tilting my head mockingly. "Don't you know, money talks? That waiter told me everything." "That's impossible," Isabella snapped, her composure cracking. "I didn't pay him to do anything." Silence fell over the room. Her slip was all I needed. There it was, her confession. Yes, I'd set her up on purpose. Earlier tonight, when I got home, I'd given Isabella a beating, knowing full well she'd be too shaken to think straight. In her rattled state, the likelihood of her exposing herself was high. And she did. It wasn't until the words left her mouth that she realized her mistake. "No, wait, I misspoke. It wasn't me." Isabella's face paled as she tried to backtrack. I spread my hands and looked at Robert and Victoria. "This is the daughter you've raised so lovingly. I don't know what I've done to make her hate me so much. I get it, you've always favored her. But I'm your biological daughter, and you just let her humiliate me like this." Robert and Victoria exchanged grim looks, their eyes now fixed on Isabella. Isabella struggled to maintain her composure. "Words mean nothing. You need real evidence. You can't just frame me like this. But it was clear that Robert and Victoria already believed me. We truly didn't know about this, Victoria said, finally breaking the silence. She approached me hesitantly. Are you okay, Sophia? I pulled my arm away from her touch. Robert's tone softened considerably. Isabella was wrong in this matter. You've already vented your anger. What more do you want? Online comments, user 1*. God, my heart breaks for Sophia here. User 2*. Robert and Victoria are so biased. They didn't even tell Sophia about the marriage alliance with the Joe family, but Isabella knew and was prepared. User 3*. Sophia was so badass just now. Queen, smiling face with heart eyes. My thoughts swirled as I let out a derisive laugh. I've been hurt. Is it too much to make some demands? I asked coolly. I don't want to marry into any family right now, and I want to go abroad. After my dramatic outburst, I got exactly what I wanted. I chose the country I'd study in myself. Fearing any sudden changes, I grabbed my bank card and left without looking back. But my decision to leave wasn't made impulsively. For 20 years, I'd buried myself in textbooks, exams, and endless responsibilities. Now that money was no longer an issue, I wanted to broaden my horizons and learn something new. I wasn't about to let Isabella take advantage of the Jiang family. I got a new SIM card and only contacted Victoria when I needed money. 2 years flew by. Robert kept urging me to return, but I ignored him. That was until Victoria issued her final ultimatum. She'd cut off my access to the family funds. Left with no choice, I reluctantly boarded a plane back home. The entire Jiang family was there to greet me when I arrived. Sophia, you finally deigned to come back, Victoria said with a forced smile. You left me no choice, I replied flatly. Her smile faltered, turning stiff and awkward. William's birthday banquet is next week, Robert interjected, setting down his teacup. You'll be attending. Rest up in the meantime. What, are you planning to marry me off again? I shot back, my tone laced with sarcasm. Robert's face darkened, his temper flaring. With your insolent attitude, do you think the Ethan family would even consider you? They're the wealthiest family in the country. Relief washed over me. Oh, Sophia, Isabella chimed in, clearly enjoying herself. You might not know this, but Ethan is William's only grandson. He officially returned to the Ethan family last year. She studied my reaction closely. What's the matter? Still haven't managed to win him over? Figures. He didn't want you when he was broke, and now he's even more out of your league. Isabella's face flushed with anger because of me. I let out a soft chuckle. I suggest you stop provoking me in the future. I've picked up quite a bit of martial arts while studying abroad these past 2 years. If I hit you again, it won't be the petty scuffles you're used to. Isabella bit down on her lip, glaring at me with pure hatred in her eyes. Satisfied with my first victory, I crossed my legs and leaned back smugly. In moments like this, I decided it was better to go wild than to overthink. If chaos was what they wanted, I'd bring it. And I must admit, it felt good. A week of joy always passes too quickly. At 6 o'clock Saturday evening, we arrived at the Ethan family's estate for a dinner party. Thinking about Ethan, I couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. It had been 2 years, would he still hold a grudge? As soon as we reached the entrance, I spotted him. Ethan. To be honest, I hadn't thought about him much these past 2 years, but seeing him again now, I had to admit, I felt a shameful flutter of attraction. Dressed in a tailored black suit with a modest lapel pin on his chest, Ethan exuded an air of sophistication and wealth. His expression, however, remained as cold and distant as ever. I stole a glance at him and noticed something else. He seemed even more fit than before. Ethan's gaze swept over me briefly, like he didn't even recognize me. Haha, Ethan is putting on a real show. He probably changed outfits 10 times just to impress Sophia at this dinner. Tell me about it. Remember how sulky he looked when Sophia left for abroad, like someone owed him millions. And don't forget how obsessed he got with strawberry cake after she left. Talk about a man of contrasts. I was a little taken aback by his indifference and sneaked another look at him. He caught my gaze and shot me a frosty glare. Immediately, I pretended to be invisible. The Ethan family was the epitome of old money elegance, and their parties reflected that. Everything was opulent and meticulously arranged. But I quickly grew bored and began wandering around. Not far away, I noticed a swing set in the garden. My feet were sore from walking, so I made my way over. When I got there, I realized someone was already sitting on the swing. It was Ethan. I froze in place, then began to tiptoe backward, hoping to escape unnoticed. Sophia. Hearing Ethan call my name, I felt a rush of nervousness. Putting on my best good girl smile, I said, "Hi, what a coincidence. I didn't know you were here. I'll just leave now." I turned to go, but Ethan grabbed my arm and pulled me back. "Use me and then run? What do you take me for?" Bad luck, I thought, but kept my tone cautious. "Ethan, look, we all have our moments of youthful impulsiveness. I'm sorry, okay?" His face grew colder. "You think an apology is enough? Why should I forgive you?" I sighed, clearly agitated. "Then, what do you want? It's not like you're short on money. I don't think I have anything you need." Ethan's eyes bore into me, his grip tightening as if afraid I might bolt. Ugh, Ethan is clearly just trying to get Sophia to stay and play with him. Such a pretender, acting all aloof while chasing after her like a lovesick puppy. I started to doubt whether these inner voices, or perhaps the universe itself, were even reliable. Time for an experiment. I turned the tables, wrapping my arms around him and catching him off guard with a quick kiss. Ethan's breathing hitched and his voice turned sharp. "Sophia, what are you doing?" Feigning innocence, I replied, "Well, you wouldn't let me go. I thought maybe you wanted me to kiss you. If not, then let me go." Ethan released me slowly, his expression darkening. "Sophia, I'm not letting you off the hook. From now on, when I call, you come." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, utterly baffled. I had assumed Ethan was joking. I was wrong. That very night, he sent me the address to his apartment. After much hesitation, my shallow attraction to him won out, and I found myself standing at his door. I lingered for a long time before finally ringing the bell. Ethan opened the door almost immediately. I had imagined dim lighting, seductive smiles, and maybe even a half-buttoned shirt. Instead, he led me straight to the kitchen. "Cook me dinner." I stared at the apron he handed me, utterly dumbfounded. Seriously, he called me over late at night just to cook. Was this some kind of joke? The problem was, I didn't know how to cook. With no other choice, I relied on a cooking tutorial I found online and managed to whip up a simple plate of scrambled eggs with tomatoes. It didn't look great, but the taste wasn't too bad. Ethan ate it all without a single word. "You can leave now," he said once he was done. I blinked, utterly incredulous. The sheer audacity of this man almost made me laugh out loud. Haha, Ethan is back at it again with his fake indifference. You know, he put on a white shirt just to play hard to get. Wait, when he said cook, I thought he meant something else entirely. Oh, you thirsty little devils, get your minds out of the gutter. Even though I was seething, I had no intention of making a scene. After all, I wasn't entirely in the right, either. I picked up my bag and prepared to leave. That's when I noticed a high-end space model sitting by the door. I had seen an identical one at home before. It was a gift Isabella had bought. I froze, my anger surging. Turning back to face Ethan, I saw the same cold indifference on his face. I pointed at the model and sneered, "A gift from Isabella." "Yes," he replied after a brief hesitation. I let out a laugh, my anger bubbling into a smile. Grabbing Ethan by the collar of his shirt, I yanked him toward me. Before he could react, my hands slipped beneath the fabric of his shirt. Ethan froze, allowing me to continue. With deliberate force, I tore off the buttons one by one, the smile on my face growing brighter. "What's the matter? Did she touch you like this too?" Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed, but he didn't answer. I used a new move I'd recently learned in self-defense class, pinning him down beneath me and straddling his waist. "Sophia," he began, but I didn't give him the chance to say more. I covered his mouth with my hand, my lips trailing over his skin, biting and licking as I went. A shiver ran through his body. I reached for the belt at his waist, leaning into his ear and whispering, "Feel it. Feel everything." The sound of the belt being unfastened echoed in the room, and Ethan let out a muffled groan, caught somewhere between pleasure and pain. Ethan pressed his lips tightly together, his expression unreadable. Only after I'd had my fill of venting did I leisurely put my clothes back on. "Sophia, what is this supposed to mean?" His voice was low, almost trembling. "Why are you taking it so seriously?" "It was just an accident," I replied nonchalantly, brushing myself off as if nothing had happened. But before I could turn to leave, Ethan caught my wrist, his eyes rimmed with a faint redness. "An accident? I'm serious, Sophia." Asterisk what? Ethan being vulnerable, this is gold. Did anyone expect this? He totally enjoyed it though. Just look at his face. Asterisk I can't believe he said that. High and mighty Ethan, huh? I smirked. "All right. How about we just keep things the way they were before?" Ethan's face darkened, his jaw tightening. "Am I that unworthy to you?" I blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "If you want to date for fun, I guess we can give it a shot." At that, Ethan's frustration spilled over. He slammed me against the wall, his lips crashing into mine, stealing my breath. His kiss was so intense, I almost couldn't catch my breath. When I finally managed to push him away, I was gasping. "Ethan, you've lost your mind." For the first time, his expression softened, and the faintest smile tugged at the corners of his lips. He reached for my hair, undoing the ponytail with one swift motion, letting the tie slide onto his wrist like a trophy. "I'll drive you home," he said. Asterisk oh my God, he's marking his territory now. "Ethan, you sly fox." Did anyone else notice how he couldn't stop smiling while driving? Sophia knows better than to provoke him today. She's retreating for once. The next morning, I went straight to Robert with a request. I want to join the family company. Isabella, sitting across the table, froze momentarily, her knife and fork pausing mid-cut. "Sophia, do you think working at the company is some kind of joke? The company's struggling enough as it is. Don't add to Mom and Dad's stress." I massaged my wrist lazily and leveled her with a sharp look. "You don't seem to learn your lessons, do you?" Isabella stomped her foot in frustration and stormed upstairs. Turning back to Robert, I pressed, "So, what do you say?" "You can join the company," Robert said after a moment, "but you'll need to attend the arranged marriage meeting." I raised an eyebrow, surprised at how easily he agreed. For once, he wasn't putting up a fight. Fine. If that's the price, I thought. It's not like he said I had to go through with it. A little white lie, a casual excuse, and I'd be off the hook. Or so I thought. When I arrived at the venue, I froze in place the moment I saw Ethan waiting there. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. "Who else were you expecting?" He shot back, irritation lacing his voice. "What's this supposed to mean? You can't seriously be thinking about marrying me," I said, incredulous. "And if I am?" he replied, his tone calm but firm. "You're insane, Ethan." After everything I've done to you, Ethan cut me off, his expression thoughtful. "And this is how I'll get back at you." I frowned, processing his words. "You're in love with me?" Ethan didn't reply. "Good. As long as you're not," I said, exhaling in relief. "Pick a date for the license." The truth was, I never cared much for love. Marriage was just another means to an end. If it wasn't Ethan, it'd be some stranger. At least with Ethan, there was an upside. I could irritate Isabella in the process. And if Ethan was looking for revenge, well, that suited me just fine. "Now," he said, taking me by surprise. Before I could protest, he dragged me home to grab my household registration booklet. We made it to the Civil Affairs office just before they closed, walking out with a marriage certificate in hand. When I returned to the family home that evening, I was still reeling. "So, how did the marriage meeting go today?" Victoria asked eagerly. Isabella smirked knowingly. Ethan probably didn't even show up. Without a word, I tossed the marriage certificate onto the table. The room fell silent. Isabella's face twisted in disbelief, her voice rising. "Sophia, you forced him, didn't you? Why can't you leave him alone?" "Why?" I rolled my eyes, feigning disinterest. "If he didn't want to marry me, do you think anyone could have made him? Could you?" "It's impossible. Absolutely impossible," Isabella spat, lunging for the certificate. My palm met her cheek in one swift motion. Feeling clear-headed now, Isabella glared at me, pure hatred blazing in her eyes. For a moment, I savored the satisfaction coursing through me. Victoria quickly pulled Isabella aside to console her, while Robert sighed heavily. "Be at the office tomorrow morning," he said. Satisfied, I turned and left. Sophia's got the whole family walking on eggshells, and no one's even surprised anymore when she throws hands. Asterisk if you had her audacity, you'd own the world too. Black-hearted queen energy, absolutely living for it. I toyed with the marriage certificate in my hand, feeling quite satisfied. Ethan was proving to be surprisingly useful. 13 the next day, Ethan suggested we move in together. I didn't refuse. There was no need to be coy about it. We'd already shared a bed more times than I could count. Honestly, I had prepared myself for the possibility that Ethan might make my life a little difficult. But to my surprise, he turned out to be the perfect domestic partner. He was a neat freak and didn't like strangers in the house. Every meal, every single day, was prepared by him. The first time I tasted his cooking, I immediately thought, this marriage is so worth it. And let's not even get started on other aspects. Ethan and I were terrifyingly compatible. Before bed that evening, he suddenly spoke. "Would you come with me to visit my mom tomorrow?" I froze for a moment, my expression growing more serious. "Of course. That's only right." His face softened considerably, and he pulled me into a hug, resting his head on my shoulder. The warmth of his breath against my neck sent a shiver down my spine. Was this guy trying to seduce me? "Oh, Sophia, you've got it all figured out." Look, Ethan's ears are red. If he's not up to something, I'd be shocked. He's getting better and better at this, isn't he? I pushed him away with a straight face and turned over. "I'm going to sleep. Good night." As I drifted off, I couldn't shake the feeling of a chill running down my back. #14 at the Jiang Corporation. I smoothly transitioned into my new position. My dad, Robert, had arranged for me to serve as an assistant to the general manager. I had no objections and quickly got the hang of it. In a short time, I even managed to rack up some small accomplishments. The general manager, Nathan Ma, was a mature and reliable man. He was serious about his work and took his responsibilities seriously. I learned a lot from working with him. Meanwhile, Isabella had joined the company earlier than I had, and was currently working in the president's office as Robert's assistant. 2 daughters, one working directly under him, the other as an assistant to a subordinate. To outsiders, it seemed obvious that Isabella was the favored child, but I saw it differently. Starting at the bottom might be harder, but you learn so much more. More importantly, I could start identifying people who might become allies in the future. I thought Nathan Ma had potential. So, when he asked me out to dinner, I agreed. We had a great conversation over the meal, but Ethan's repeated calls started to get on my nerves. I hung up on him without hesitation. Later, Nathan drove me home, and wouldn't you know it, Ethan was there to witness it. The moment I stepped inside, Ethan grabbed my arm. "Who was that? So this is why you didn't answer my calls tonight, because you were out with him." "Ethan, don't you think you're being a little too controlling?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "We're just a couple without feelings for each other. At most, we're, what, bedmates? You don't even like me, so why do you care so much about what I do?" Ethan's face darkened. "Sophia, we're married. What else are you trying to do with other men? Am I not enough for you? What's the deal? Are you already trying to move on to someone else?" I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Is that how you see me, Ethan?" My gaze drifted toward the model Isabella had gifted him, and my expression turned icy. "Do you even know why I approached you in the first place? It's because Isabella likes you. I wanted to see her suffer, so I pursued you out of spite. I wanted to see the pain on her face, and now I've gotten exactly what I wanted." I took a step forward in my heels and lightly patted his cheek. "So to me, you're nothing more than a tool for revenge." "Got it." I turned to leave, but Ethan's grip tightened on my wrist. "I know." His voice was tinged with sadness. "I've known from the very beginning, but I don't want you seeking out anyone else. That's why I agreed to this." This time, it was my turn to be stunned. "Sophia, no matter what kind of person you are, good or bad, I like you. I've always liked you. It's okay if you don't like me. You can use me, but please don't involve anyone else. Just me, okay?" Ethan's eyes reddened, and his voice was almost pleading. I stood there, frozen in shock. "Then why did you take the model from Isabella?" "I didn't. It's mine. She just bought a copy of the same one." "But you said..." "I lied, okay. I wanted to make you jealous. Hit me if you want, scream at me, I don't care. Just don't act like you don't care at all." For reasons I couldn't explain, the anger in my chest suddenly dissipated. Seeing my softened stance, Ethan hesitated before handing me something. The moment it touched my hand, I felt as though I'd been burned, my entire body heating up. Later that night, as I looked at the man wearing a choker and blindfold, I lost all self-control and pounced on him. "Damn it, Ethan, you sneaky bastard." Oh my God, they finally talked it out. I was getting so frustrated with his repressed feelings. "Wait, what was that thing he gave her?" "Someone spill the tea already. I'm a premium member. Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me." 15 Ever since his confession, Ethan had become unbearably clingy. The moment I showed the slightest impatience, he'd just look at me with those red, silent, puppy dog eyes. I couldn't stand that look, so I had no choice but to accept this sweet burden. Meanwhile, I was getting more and more comfortable at the Jiang Corporation. Robert had even started assigning me high-level projects that were well beyond what my current position would typically handle. I had performed exceptionally well, which, to my surprise, caught Ethan off guard. I had initially thought it would take me a long time to surpass Isabella in the company. But who knew she'd make a foolish move? In an attempt to prove herself, she approached a rival company, trying to stage a little drama with them. She hadn't expected the rival company to play along so convincingly, only to turn around and set a trap for the Jiang Corporation. I covered Ethan's mouth and whispered, "Don't make a sound." Thanks to this incident, I inadvertently became a connected insider. My father, Robert, personally took me under his wing. With the experience I had gained at the grassroots level, I quickly found my footing and managed the work effortlessly. After Ethan introduced me to his mother, the entire Williams family finally accepted me. Our wedding had been in the works for quite some time. On the big day, Ethan and I stood shoulder to shoulder, a perfect match in everyone's eyes. Isabella showed up too. She clung to Nathan's arm, her attitude smug and condescending. "Sophia, you're despicable. Does Ethan even know why you're with him? Guess what? If he finds out, do you think this marriage will still happen?" The moment Isabella finished her sentence, Ethan walked over, interlocking his fingers tightly with mine. "Sorry to disappoint you, but I already know everything." Isabella's face twisted in shock as Nathan, clearly uneasy, attempted to curry favor with Ethan. Seeing her lose composure, he gave her a sharp glare and quickly dragged her away. That evening, I couldn't stop smiling as I looked over the list of wedding gifts. Ethan, fresh out of the shower, came up behind me and wrapped me in his arms. His slightly damp hair brushed softly against my skin, sending a pleasant chill down my spine. "Tease me," Ethan murmured, playing with my fingers. "Sophia, do you even like me a little?" I turned to look at him, noticing the cautious vulnerability in his gaze. Hooking my arms around his neck, I whispered, "Of course I do, you fool." Ethan's eyes darkened, and in one swift motion, he scooped me up in his arms. As I was laid onto the bed, I tugged on his tie and pulled him in for a kiss. "Ah, here comes the censorship again. Really? You can't be serious. Come on, remove the censorship. I'm begging you." All right, this couple is officially done. Let's move on to someone else.